Okay, how's it going, everybody? All right, I'm going to get straight to the point. Self-love versus Christianity. My first point, in regards to why they're even at odds to begin with. Self-love is from just to put it just roughly. This is very going to be give me a casual chat. Self-love in itself is just as it defines itself as it is self-expressed. Is self-love. You love yourself. It's a healthy grade of love. I would expect it to be a healthy grade of love. It is to be reasonable about your boundaries, to have a proper offense in terms of the need to defend yourself. So it's like a great defense is a great offense. Christianity in its difference is Christ centered. It's a submissive deal. Is a lot of things attributed to the the positive expressions based off an inward faith of Christ and his sacrifice and what he's done and the things he's called us to do. Big difference between the two is even though you could say, well, aren't they like one and the same? They're basically like the same. Well, not entirely, because the premise of just being of self-love is that you lack these qualities. You lack qualities of being patient with yourself, loving yourself, being kind to yourself, defending yourself. Um, okay, mouse of generally you're filling in the gaps that you have that you are lacking. So if you are get talked over a lot, self-loving yourself might mean, um okay, maybe I should stand up for myself because I deserve to have a talking point to speak. And so you think overall, and I thought this too for a good minute, about self-love being something that is there are things you lack. There are things that you don't have. And to love yourself is just to have a reasonable, healthy relationship with yourself in regards to the world, in perspective. I mean, in respect to the world. I just learned this recently, and I just like actualized this. Truth be told, I used to be very afraid of just trying to give in to the idea of Christianity. I was always a Christian, I knew my stuff, but the idea of submitting to Christ, God in Christ, was always a terrifying aspect, because it was like I'm submitting myself, I'm submitting this being of my own identity, and I was like, I didn't know what I was going to become at that point. And so, um, of course, some people realize this in different aspects, but it's ultimately, for me, it was just realizing that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't as terrifying as I thought it was going to be, and it's something that I have to continually do. It's a discipline in itself, um, to submit submit to Christ, die to yourself, die to your flesh. Does that mean you stop taking care of yourself and taking care of your body? No, it does not. There's a difference. There's a big difference, and Galatians 5 speaks about that. I'm not sure where it says. It says that no man um um no man doesn't care for themselves, they take care of their body. It's like it presumes this aspect of self-care. You care about yourself, you're gonna keep your hygiene together, you're gonna keep your smarts together. It tells you to renew your mind. um it tells you to take care of yourself in terms of your behavior, in terms of your care, your wellness, so your health. However, when it comes down to selfishness, it denies Christianity, flat out denies selfish ambitions. It's a faith that in itself is very selfless in the core. I say that because, even like, let's say you're a person who's very talented, who's a singer, who's a great musician, and you feel in yourself a great confidence, like, I can do this. I can use these talents and attributes. Now, self love may say, well, yes, you can. You definitely can use these attributes. But in terms of Christianity, it'll say, wait. It tells you to wait until that right proper time comes. And it says, okay, you know, you've been serving people for the longest of times. Now, someone will notice you, and they will grab you, and they will say, here, you are of having servant, and now we're going to take you from this place to another place where not only or have you proven to us that you can serve, that you have a servant's mentality, a heart, the heart of a servant? But now you have this mentality of humility, whereas you understand your position, so that when you do rise into a position of leadership, you are in a sense a under shepherd. You don't let the position is not in your head. You're not big headed. You know who you are. Well, rather you recognize where you are at, and you recognize that all you've been doing was serving, and so now you all you continue to do is serve. Only you're serving people from a higher platform, and so again, it maintains a selfless attitude in a leader position, you know. And so, from what I understand, Christianity continues to call us to be servants. And now, when I think about this, I think historically, think about how in early America they were taught Christianity, and it was said they pushed chattel slavery in the name of Jesus. I thought that was I'm still baffled by that today, to be honest. Like how is that possible? Now we could say Old Testament, but I'm like that's for Jewish people. This isn't toward Christians. Even though in New Testament it doesn't, there's like probably one place, and I believe it could be First Corinthians 7:21. That could be it, where it speaks about if you have the opportunity to get your freedom, get it. But that's probably like the only one. There could be a few others, but I think that's like one of the few that actually advocates freedom if possible. Um, and also, if you think about the Old Testament, there are plenty of loopholes, plenty of things there that suggest freedom, potential freedom. The only time it doesn't is like if you have a family, and they even have a narrative in which it could have been Jacob or something like that. It was basically like under like the patriarchy of Abraham, where he had the patriarchal society of Abraham. I'm sorry if I use that's like a buzzword, I guess. I'm thinking. But what I mean more so is that he uses he tells him uh like he gets he one of the sons gets a son of his own, and he has to leave for some reason, and he says, you know, your son has to stay because he's my property. And that's a demonstration. I have to look that one up. But from what I understand, it's like the children and the byproducts of that enslavement are kind of like is his. That's just was the culture at the time. Um, but apart from that, there are plenty of things in there. If the person is not happy with them, then they give them in slavery. And if you're a slave, you could definitely work that out in your favor because you just be in inhospitable. Um, and then you just be a bother or trouble. But the thing was is that people who had slaves had wealth, they had provisions. So if you wanted freedom, you definitely be getting freedom all on your own. You'd have to make it survive, you know. And so that was part of it. That was part of the issue. Um, Even with daughters or not daughters, slaves, female slaves, if they were a problem, they had to they not only had to leave if they were trouble, but they had to be the owners of the slaves had to give them provisions as they left. You know, there are just plenty of things in there that I think is in Exodus and Deuteronomy. Like, just read that. Like, I mean, it's long, but if you take your time to read it, you see all these loopholes. The year of Jubilee, that's typically after the 50th year, I believe. That's when slaves should be let go. From what I've read, from what I understand, they let go because the, that's when all the prices become low. I'm pretty sure they give everything for free to the patrons around them. Because from what I've read, from what I understand, the price lowers itself with each upcoming month near the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th month. And so I'm like, that's a way for them to get their freedom. There are plenty of ways for them to get their freedom. It's just chattel slavery and American slavery was just one of those hard places where it couldn't happen. Self love, back to self love and Christianity. Um, it calls for all people to have this mentality of a subjugated mentality, a slavery mentality. Not just me, the white person, black person, Indian person, uh, people who were once white supremacists. I mean, there's Amazing Grace. That dude was a slave trader, and he was an abolitionist, I believe, a preacher and an abolitionist. Um, But there's plenty of people um who are, after we come to Christ and we die to our old selves, that old nature. In Galatians 5, it speaks about the flesh in itself. It says like the things of the flesh, and it says like the envy and the jealousy, the drunkenness and stuff like that. It says all these things, and they show that in detail, that these are the things of the flesh that must die. These are the things of the flesh. um I want to say, I can't remember. I was gonna say First Corinthians chapter 10 or 9, where it speaks about like not being linked with a prostitute, because that's it's a similar to like linking with Christ. I mean, not in that one to one comparison, but it's like um avoid sexual immorality, because if you if you bound yourself with into sexual immorality with someone who's sexually immoral, you become one with that person. And it's saying like, is Christ bound to a prostitute? And he's like, no, no, he's not. So Christianity maintain it's just from Christianity's premise is not really one that's selfish. It and you would tell the fruit of somebody by how they what they do, how they act. If they're selfish, um, and of course you have mercy for them because they're going where they're going. They're in their own path and their own journey. But it doesn't mean that a person, I mean, eventually at some point, and it's not some point that we will measure, dictate, but it's a point where we understand, we have humility ourselves. We understand that, hey, we weren't perfect when we were saved. We were growing and where we're at. We weren't perfect. We weren't 100% on fire all the time. There were times where we fell, times where we fell short, times where we made moral discrepancies. So and self love again. I had this thought from this post, and it was about how people have this idea of showing more righteousness, but it's, as you peer closer into it and see, it is righteousness disguised as it's not selfish ambition. Sorry, it's described as kind of kind of veiled over selfish ambition, and that's just something you'll see when you spend more time with people. um and again, no one's perfect, but if it's that attempt, that selflessness, that desire for Christ, um and again, when you see it, it's uncanny. um I don't know. That's my word for weird. I'm not sure if I'm actually using it right, but basically, you'll see it, and it's like it's so unhuman almost. When you think about it, it's just it's so unlike us. So when you see it, it's just like, wow, that's different. That's very different, and especially for those who don't know Christ, especially those who are curious with Christ, that's going to be those things that will draw them or repel them away. And so, again, a lot of the things from self love are great. They're very great. You defending yourself, you know, um, because like for instance, in First Corinthians 13, it speaks about not rejoicing in righteousness. So when somebody tries to do evil in your presence and wants you to join them, even in Romans 1, where they speaks about the evil of man, where they commit evil and they try to have other people agree with them. I want to say in First Peter, they was talking about like how, or it could be Timothy, First Timothy, where they say they do crazy things, and uh since they see you not doing them, they ridicule you and stuff like that. And even in Jude, where they speak about evil people who I can't remember. I know it's like is similar to uh First Timothy chapter 3, about the people who won't listen, the people who will just be impulsive, be seeking whatever that satisfies them. Sorry. So they said, for those people who are entrapped in these desires, unwilling to change, unwilling to actually even encouraging people to sorry, encouraging people to do what they're doing. They say to keep away from them. So back in my time, I I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better, and I was pretty glad for self help because I had certain expectations, certain ideas and mindsets of who I thought Christ was, and I just didn't have that courage, and I had fear because I was like, I didn't want to sit here and get it, be afraid. I was too afraid of the idea of just speaking my mind and being honest, and rather that I was just speaking out of spite, just saying, what about these things? And of course, as I spoke, it my answers became clear. They were revealed to me at the time. But it was just times where I just didn't become 100% clear. Like it was like past all that anger and stuff, it was just like, I don't know. I really don't know. I couldn't really tell you what's going on. So nowadays, I mean, especially now, and again, I guess it's just God's timing with things, that's my thought. Ultimately, if you scale life back, and you see, if you picture life like a timeline, and you just picture it like just currently from your perspective, and you just say, okay, what happened yesterday, what may happen today, it is kind of like a big timeline. You see it, now you see, and then you move back and you say, okay, at some point, there are certain points there that I got some the aha moments, and it wasn't just like popcorn. Aha, this is good. This is good. It kind of reminds me of a certain somebody. But I guess for me, I'm more so thinking about like those moments that weren't just good talking points, but were moments that were very meaningful. Uh, and again, great wisdom is great wisdom, but if there's no application behind that wisdom, then it's just empty chatter to me. To me, you know. So, and boy, do we love to talk. We love to philosophize about plenty of things. So it's just understanding that concept of what matters and truth that's internalized in you, not just saying stuff. Because I used to say stuff. I still have trouble saying things just to say them, or saying things because um I'm thinking, I'm in my thoughts, and these sounds great, without actually having any knowledge backing it. And so it makes me think about I was gonna say Galatians 5, but it was I can't remember where it's from, but he was talking about these people who was just talking, who was just simply uh I mean, I guess it's similar to the Galatian. I mean, not Galatians, the Pharisees Jesus was talking about. Um could it have been, it could be Matthew 19, where he was speaking about these people, these Pharisees, they're in the square, and they saying, we sung to you a funeral song, you didn't say anything, you didn't cry, you didn't weep, and we sung to you wedding songs, and you didn't weep. How's it going, person over there? I'm not sure who you are, but if you want, you can say something. But yeah, um I don't know, I hope you can hear me. But yeah, it's just like these ideas, and it's kind of like Act 17, where Paul was talking to these philosophers, and they was just talking, they was just making up ideas, and just kind of just going, just wrestling with the hay, just kind of sitting here talking and talking and talking, and just coming up with ideas just to come up with them and stuff. And as Jesus was talking about in terms of the Pharisees, just they were just saying things to manipulate people. It's kind of like people's fears of the church when they say, "Oh, you're just trying to control me." It's like, we sung these songs to you, but you didn't do what we expected you to do. And it's just, that's problematic, because that's like using wisdom poorly, that's using judgments poorly. um and that's sadly, that's one of the things people who are outside of the church, they fear that they're trying to control them rather than assist them, help them, aid them. And so taking all these things into account, um self-love in itself, it has great things in it, but what's the end goal? What's the later uh position? Where is it? Is it just you helping yourself out? Are you out to help someone else out with this self-love? Because I remember when Francis Chan himself was talking about it, but I think I already spoke about that in my last video. But it was just the idea that if you practice self-love, you should be able to navigate better and have a richer experience of life. And I think to a point, that's definitely a formidable statement to make. But what I am thinking more so in terms of in contrast, I mean, by comparison of Christianity, um, it makes similar claims, but it's more so inverted. Like, and when you think about it, it says, um, like the gifts of the Spirit, and they say you walk in the Spirit, and they say the gifts of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, kindness, self control. Um, and they say this is when you deny the flesh, deny these carnal mentalities you have to die to daily, and they make sense. They definitely make sense. And again, it's using the same materials of goodness and patience and all these great aspects, and but it's saying that from this position that mankind naturally has this disposition where we choose selfishly, and you don't need any more proof than check out, just see how children act. If you have a cousin, if you have um I guess a daughter, or whatever small child, you see how selfish they can be. How, and if they have brothers, I remember when I was really young, my brothers, I was selfish at times, and you just see how just the very, because kids are straightforward, and that's also we understand that kids can be cruel. They definitely have a pecking order, um, especially with the weak. They pick on the weak because they can, because they want to. They group up in numbers, and so simply this statement is that people in themselves just has they have a natural propensity to do selfish things. And God says, God in himself, when he died and stuff, he says, okay, if you believe in him, all those things that are counted against you are finished. You have a completely, absolutely new slate. So given that, you do good things. And then again, it's inverted with self-love and secularism. They say, well, you're not really born with evil. You don't have evil at all. You actually have potential to be good or evil, depending, and as far as I could tell, depending on where you go, depending on what you feed. And again, that is they're very close, they're very similar, but they're not alike. So given this, I guess given this, I guess it all depends on where you're at. Self-love has great things, but Christ in Christianity calls you to die to all those other things and believe in Jesus. And by that belief, you have, I mean, more so about faith. It's a faith-based thing versus a purely practical thing. So with one is more practical, the other one is faith and practicality. So I can definitely see how faith in itself is can last itself far longer than mere practicality, because practicality fails um fails, I guess, at perception. So you can be kind, you can be patient, you can be gentle, but you'll have people who will act contrary to those things. People who may kick you while you're down, who may act selfishly and may say, this is my brand of self-love, and they may be just very selfish, and they may harm you and may break you in terms of, I don't know if I can keep being patient with this person. I don't know if I can be gentle with this person. I don't know if I can keep doing these self-loving things, because, and of course what their answer is typically with the self-love is to avoid them. And that's what Christianity says for people who are simply toxic. They don't care about changing. Um to move away, get away from that person. So I guess that's it. Um yeah, that's it.